1 year after the original release of the SNES, the system didn't have much to show for RPGs. Final Fantasy IV was released to some fanfare, but didn't sell well in North America. Draken was released to much less acclaim, and faded into obscurity. There just weren't that many RPGs at the time, and Capcom wanted to try their hand at creating one in 1993. Enter Breath of Fire, a traditional turn-based game that began an epic franchise. Breath of Fire features random encounters much like most traditional RPGs. Compared to later games, the encounter rate is pretty high too, which seemed normal at the time, but definitely would frustrate modern players. The good thing is that this game incorporated an auto battle feature that can be used to speed through simple encounters, and can also be cancelled at any time with a press of the B button. Combat is turn-based, and you can have up to 4 members in your party at one time. The battles take place in an isometric view, which was definitely a novel concept back then. The battle animations for attacks and spells were actually done pretty well, and provided something few other games of the time did. Another thing I liked about this game was that each enemy, even the bosses, have a visual health bar that decreases as they take damage. This was especially helpful because it allowed players to plan their attacks accordingly. Spells require ability points, which serve as Breath of Fire's version of magic points. Breath of Fire has received some criticism for requiring a lot of grinding to level. Indeed, you can get absolutely wrecked if you travel too far without leveling a bit and upgrading your gear. In all honesty though, most RPGs of this era were like this, and it certainly didn't stand out as an extreme deviation from the norm. However, if you only like RPGs where you can avoid enemies on the screen or random encounters in general, this may be a problem for you. Like most games of its kind, the title uses anime-style artwork. Though there are some dark moments in the story, most of the sprites are pretty bright and colorful. The color palette doesn't come off as dark as, say, Final Fantasy VI. Because the game was released relatively early in the SNES's life cycle, it unfortunately lacks some of the graphical enhancements later games made use of, such as non-battle sprite animations. Overall, I think the best aspect of Breath of Fire was the music. The score is nostalgic and memorable, and when I returned to play the game, it brought back many memories. The intro, called Starting the Journey, is definitely one of my favorites, and its uplifting and triumphant feeling leaves the player with an impression that an epic quest is ahead of them. For an early era SNES RPG, the soundtrack was great. Breath of Fire's story revolves around clans based on legendary creatures and animals. The main protagonist Ryu is part of the Dragon Clan, a group that's been driven to near extinction by the Dark Dragon Clan. Real creative, right? As a young orphan, Ryu was taken care of by his sister Sarah, who can use powerful summoning magic. However, their village is soon set ablaze by Emperor Zog and the Dark Dragon Clan, and Sarah is taken captive while trying to save the clan. Along his adventure, Ryu meets several allies, including the dog-like Bo, Karn the Thief, the angel-like Nina, a fish creature named Gobi, a Naga named Blue, a strongman named Ox, and the mole-like Mogu. They all work together in various ways to overcome adversity, and have character development similar to what you would find in Final Fantasy IV. The other cool facet of the various characters is that each has a special skill that can be used on the world map. This allows you to find special items, discover secret passages, and even fly around the world. Unfortunately, I do think the game's English translation suffers quite a bit. The game was published by Squaresoft, but at that point, the company didn't pour great resources into localization efforts, a cold truth that can be seen from the earliest moments of the game. Most RPGs of this era, including some of the most popular titles like Secret of Mana and Final Fantasy VI, were translated by 1 or 2 people in extremely small windows of time. This made it almost impossible to guarantee a quality English translation, and Breath of Fire is the perfect example. Breath of Fire's other glaring defect, I think, is the fact that there is so little text space for item names. Because the Japanese language can be used to convey meaning with much less space, the translators were forced to shorten the English item names to the point where they're almost indecipherable. Breath of Fire didn't get too much acclaim from what I remember at the time, though it was featured in Volume 62 of Nintendo Power. At that time, RPGs just really hadn't taken off in the West like they did in Japan through the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy series. The good thing about playing Breath of Fire today is that there's a Game Boy Advance version of the game that adds several beneficial changes. That version adds a dash button, made the menus a little bit better, and lowered the overall encounter rate. The items still have shortened names, which is annoying, but the GBA counterpart is still superior in many ways. Ultimately, Breath of Fire was the first in what became a very well recognized series of 6 RPGs. All the games are spiritual successors of each other too, with similar themes like Dragon Clan, Ryu as the lead protagonist, and a medieval fantasy style. While I think the earlier games in the series were actually better, the franchise as a whole is widely respected among RPG enthusiasts. As a series, Breath of Fire still gets some notoriety today, and fans often request that it be rebooted. Overall, Breath of Fire is a quintessential early 90s RPG. It has a fantasy story with a lively cast of characters and an epic-oriented soundtrack. A first playthrough will last you about 30 hours, which is pretty solid for an SNES game. The game's also very cheap compared to other RPGs on the system, which is great news for collectors. While I don't think the game is a true masterpiece as far as RPGs go, it was an honorable first dive into the genre by Capcom, and will still please fans of the genre that haven't gotten around to playing it before. If you like this review and remember Breath of Fire, leave a comment below about the most memorable aspect of the game to you. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell below to be alerted upon the addition of new ones. Also, please consider supporting my channel via YouTube's Join feature to receive member exclusives, such as advanced videos and complete video transcripts.